My name is Rick Martinez, and I'm a retired truck driver. This happened when I was like 30 years old, and I'm now 62. So, on the road, I see many strange things. I've told this story many times as well. A lot of people don't believe me, but it starts off in Stockton, CA, where I picked up a load of pipe. My destination was Salt Lake City in Utah. I was supposed to refuel in Busta, CA at a truck stop, but lo and behold, they were out of fuel. So I told my supervisor, hey, I got like half a tank of fuel, and he told me to continue and hit the first truck stop when I saw it. So 100 miles into Nevada, nothing but desert. I didn't see anything but sparsely lit desert with a couple of towns. When I noticed my gauge set was actually reading empty, and I'm thinking, well, that's not right. So I took the first exit that I saw and I pulled over. I told my supervisor, who was right behind me an hour away, that I was afraid to continue on and run the tank dry. So he told me to sit still and he would be by in an hour and we could siphon some of the fuel from his tanks into mine. So I just sort of sat there and I noticed that it was a small town with pretty sparse lighting. As I sat there, I couldn't run the engine, so I couldn't really listen to the radio, so I just ended up sitting there in silence. I don't do drugs or anything, and I didn't make this up, but this is what happened. So as I'm sitting there, I notice a lot of undone construction, a trailer park to my right completely dark, and a church off to my left about a block away with its lights on. It's about 2 a.m. now, and I see this jackrabbit hopping around my truck. It hops around and just sort of stares at me and keeps hopping around. So I'm getting hungry, and I notice what looks to be a convenience store another block away from the church. I get out of the truck and I decide to walk to the store. But while I'm walking, I keep hearing this dog howling like it's in pain. As I'm passing the church, the 2 doors are wide open and I hear clapping like they're having a service or something. As I pass the church, I look inside and there's no one except for this skinny white old man reading from the Bible and talking about hell or something. I don't linger too long though, and I pass the church. Then I heard clapping again. About then, the dog starts howling again. I notice that there's a bunch of empty houses on this street that goes up a hill. I'm still making my way towards what I think is a little mini-mart or something. All the time the dog keeps howling, all the lights are on, and as I go inside, this little old lady with glasses is reading a book. There's hardly anything in this store, maybe a few cans of food, a couple of bags of chips, water in the refrigerators, but that's about it. And strangely, the whole time the lady didn't even pick her head up from her book. So I grab some water and some chips. I'm pretty hungry at this stage, and there's basically nothing to eat in my truck. So I asked the old lady, is this all you have, and where is everybody at? She told me that everybody moved out, and new construction was supposed to begin like 6 months ago, but hadn't. She didn't say anything after that, so I just paid her, and I walked out and started walking back towards the truck. But again, the whole time I'm walking, this dog is still howling. So as I get closer towards the church, I looked up the street towards where I think the howling's coming from, and I decide to go and see for myself why the dog was howling and if it needs help. There's houses on both sides of the street, they're all boarded up and dark though. I saw a house with its lights on. It must have had about 5 foot of fence as well, and when I looked over the fence, I was just in complete shock because what I saw was a man in his underwear with a chain attached to his neck on all fours howling. And man, did the hairs on my arms stick up on end as I saw this other man burst through the back door and kick the man on all fours and yell at him to shut up. The man who was chained ran into a doghouse and I was just in shock, and I turned and ran back down the hill to my truck. As I passed the church, both doors are still wide open, but there were no lights on anymore, and still I could hear this clapping. Finally, though, I made it to my truck and called my supervisor and told him what I saw. I told him to hurry up and get here so I can leave. My supervisor asked what exit I was talking about, and I told him, and he said, "Oh, I passed that one." He had to turn around and come back to get me, so I'm just sitting there, and this rabbit is still hopping around my truck, and I'm just sort of watching it. It stopped and looked up at me, and all of a sudden I just hear someone say, "Leave." I'm not saying the rabbit said it, but it was weird that the rabbit looked at me and then all I heard was "leave." Well, I rolled up the window and waited for my supervisor, who showed up 5 minutes later. I told my supervisor what happened, and he just laughed at me and told me that I'm going to have to do a drug test. I didn't sleep on that whole trip to Utah until I got to Salt Lake City. And after that, I never went back to that place. So before I tell this story, I really feel like I should start off with a bit of background info. So I'm 22 years old. My dad is an essential worker who works around patients with COVID-19, and as a family, we had decided that it would be best that he not return home for the time being because my mum had recently gotten her hernia removed, which had made her immune system pretty weak, so we didn't want to put her in any harm's way. My mum is bedridden too, so she doesn't move around much. So one day, I had stayed up until around 3 a.m. watching Prison Break, and at this point, I'm pretty tired. This whole coronavirus quarantine thing got my schedule all types of messed up, so I decided that it would be best if I just sleep right away so I can try to wake up a bit earlier tomorrow morning. I put my phone on charge, I drank a bit of water, and then I lay down. I fell asleep pretty much instantly too. I wake up and I try to move my arms, but I'm not able to. I can sort of look around, but it doesn't feel like my eyes are moving. It's kind of like when you see something through your peripheral vision. And then I see the black figure to my left, which I've come to befriend from my 2 or 3 times seeing him and having sleep paralysis like this. I then close my eyes and exert all the energy that I can into moving, and I wake up, sweating bullets. It was around 4 in the morning, so I decided that I would just continue to watch a movie or something, so I didn't get much sleep that night. Fast forward to Wednesday night, my mum and I decided to watch an old Indian movie, so I went to lay down on my dad's side of the bed and we started to watch the movie. An hour in, I hear the beep of the safe in my room open. The beep is pretty loud, so anybody could easily hear it. Nobody besides my mum and me were home, and even if somebody was able to break in, there was no way that they were able to make it into my room like that. I mean, it would have to go through the living room towards the hallway and go up the stairs to get into my room, so I would have easily seen someone walk past my parents' room, or at least heard them. So I started to panic because my dad's Glock 19 was in there and had some ammo tucked away to the side as well. It was an old-fashioned lock, so it wasn't hackable or anything like that. The only people that knew the code were my dad, my mum and I, but a second later, we hear something drop to the floor. I run to close the room door and open up the lock that was in my parents' room, which had a couple of guns inside. I load up and I get to the move, carefully making my way into my room, trying not to make any noise. My finger was on the trigger the whole time, and my heart was pounding. Time also felt like it just had stopped. Normally, it would take less than a minute to get to my room, but it took me at least 3 this time. I looked through every room before I got to mine, and as soon as I approached, I heard footsteps inside. I point the gun up and slowly move towards the door so I can see inside. I take a couple of peeks, and I don't see anything. Well, I rush inside and I look around, and there's nobody. I instantly stand towards the corner so I would be able to see everywhere, so no one's able to run up on me. And after about a minute or so, I look around and see that my dad's gun was indeed on the floor, and the bullets were scattered everywhere. I had some money in the safe, but all of it was still in there. But at this, my mum immediately calls the police. But if there was someone in my room, there's just no way that they could get out without using the door. And there were no vents in my room, no windows, nothing. A little bit creeped out now, I go to my mum's room and she has this scared look on her face. I ask her what's wrong, and she tells me the scariest thing that I've ever heard in my life. She goes on to tell me that while I was gone, she saw me come into the room and stand towards the middle of it with an evil smile. She stares right up at me, then she hears the footsteps and hears me shouting that I was going to be right there. She wipes her tears from her face, and then I enter the room and continue to ask her what's wrong. It is the next day now, and my mum and I still don't know what the heck happened, and we're both still terrified. My mum and I told the police everything when they arrived, and they looked around and told us that there were no signs of a break-in of any sort. Strangely though, the lock in my room is a little bit wonky. For some reason it just refuses to close now. We decided to call my uncle and his son to come live with us because we were scared. They live only 2 houses down, so it wasn't too much of a hassle for them. But if any of you guys have any explanation for what happened, I know I'm all ears because we have no idea. This happened a few weeks ago during my birthday. So my family and I had just finished eating, and I was talking with my mum while we were waiting for the cake. Suddenly, a glass started to move slowly in my direction. My reaction was to check if the table was inclined or something. My mum at the same moment sneezed, so I told her to repeat the way that she had moved to see if it would move again, but nothing happened. We continued talking, but less than 5 minutes after that, it moved again, in my direction like before, but this time my mum was looking at it too, so I wasn't the only one who saw it. After that, we just thought of it as something weird and a little bit funny, and we sort of forgot about it. But during the night, I went for a glass of water, and there was a glass right in the border of the table. It was upside down, so it left a trace of liquid. A week passed, and my brother was frying some potatoes while he was taking the last one to the frying pan, and it felt like something or someone grabbed his arm, he said, making him drop everything on the floor and burning his feet with burning oil. Just after that happened, too, he mentioned that he had seen in the past year a little girl at the door of his room and another time standing on the side of the bed. And he said that the reason why he mentioned it was that he believes that it was that girl who grabbed him. We didn't really know what to do, and we didn't talk more about the topic after that. Then another day, just watching some movies with my mum on her bed, she had to refrain herself from telling me, "Hey, your dad wants to sit here." Now, I know that this is going to sound strange to some people, but my dad passed away a few years ago, and my mum often says this. I should also mention too that she says that she can always feel him at home and like watching and taking care of us, but she's never afraid of him. But this time, she jumped from her seat, totally scared because there was a dark shadow behind or connected to what she thought was my dad. Our house has had many paranormal events since I can remember. In fact, some nights you can see a tall man in the backyard at night, or during the rainy afternoons. People walking by the corridor, voices when there's nobody else in the room. None of these events caused more than a surprising feeling, but these last few events that occurred, we all agreed that it's actually pretty terrifying. Not what happened exactly, but how it makes us feel. This just feels different.